Hi, it's Tim Stokes here, the Managing Director of Profit Transformations. And I'm here today to talk about the 5 communication skills your business will definitely benefit from to boost client referrals and staff productivity. The contents of this webinar training include the definition of effective communication, the 2 essential ingredients of teaching or instructing employees, the number 1 personality profiling tool. After looking at dozens of different ones, there's 1 or 2 that stand out head and shoulders above all the others, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. The 3 valuable people skills that are essential to learn in business, because when you do, you stop hiring poor quality staff that you may need to put off in the months. You also free up your time. You also learn to leverage better with your tasks that you're doing now to free up your time. How to motivate staff to be more productive and much happier. A bit about my background. I've been a personal growth researcher since 1990. I discovered it was food for my soul, you could say. I got excited by it when I discovered that's what I was really looking for in life. And it's taught me an enormous amount about people, from being passionate in investigating this subject. Studied psychology and have been mentored by a lecturer of psychology from Sydney University who became a friend, and spent quite a lot of months working with him to find the practical side of psychology, and especially applied to business. Researched and tested various different personality profiling tools, Myers-Briggs, emotional intelligence quotients, all sorts of interesting different ways of identifying characteristics of behavior and personality in people. Entered business training as an industry in 1997 and developed leadership, teaching, sales and mentoring skills essential for my success in my business in training business owners. And I've developed course content for real-world application with spectacular results, including clients that have increased profits up to $680,000 in a year, business owners that have grown by multiple millions of dollars year after year, and clients that have doubled their turnover from $3 million up to $45 million as a result of doubling their annual turnover year after year after year. So that's a little bit about my background. My alliance partners and business clients that I've worked with over the years, here's a few of them: Hayes Knight Queensland, Bachman Robinson, AVD CPA, AD Hamilton Associates, BTAX, Ashgrove Accountants, Arrow Accounting, Stephen Joes and Associates, RA Carroll Accountants, Hetherington Associates. Most of these have pretty much attended the courses that I've run, so they become advocates as a result of that, not just because I've talked to them and met them briefly. Net profit increases for the accounting firms that have attended our courses have ranged from 55% to 100%, and that's without increasing leads into the business as a focus. It's purely by optimizing the business to be more efficient and creating synergistic environments where, by working on team building, systems and measuring, we've realized these profit increases. And since 1997, I've worked with 1,000 plus businesses in retail, service, manufacturing, importing and wholesale, and about 85% of those businesses that I've worked with have been in the service industry. It's given me a great insight into how businesses need to run and function and be managed very efficiently. Let's begin with the definition of communication. This is a code that I live by, and I found it to be extremely valuable in how I deal with clients and how I communicate to people. Effective communication is seen by the response you get. As a result of our communication, sometimes people forget everything that we've said and follow none of our instructions. Other times they follow exactly what we said to the letter and produce spectacular outcomes exactly as we would have if we were carrying out the same task. And that's the 2 ends of the scale. I believe it's a great way to live your life, is to think about the response you get is an indicator of how effective you have communicated. And you see this in various different environments in the business. It's very easy to blame our employees for not doing what we ask. And the world often likes the word blame, but it's much more effective and, should I say, beneficial to think about, well, if people don't do what I want, as an outcome of communication, it's beneficial for both of us, then I need to improve my own communication. Common barriers of effective communication, I believe, include these major ones. a general big lack of understanding of people. And when you think about it, we go into business and we need to learn a lot more about people because people is the common element of all businesses. Customers are people, employees are people, suppliers, if you have them, are people, business partners are even people. So why aren't we studying psychology before we go into business? But that is generally the case. People really don't understand other people, and yet they spend their whole life with them. They don't treat it as a subject to research and develop over many years or decades even. Personality clashes. Opposites attract, but often over time become irritating, and then clashes set up. Or they just clash simply because of people that are opposite to ourselves in their personality. Agendas, what you want, but others may not. So sometimes agendas, we like to think that what we want as an outcome is what everyone wants. And sadly, that's not the case. People have very different points of view, very different goals, very different agendas in how they want to work with others. And that's where things can break down. Win-lose adopted mindsets. Often in business, it's very tough. I work with a lot of business owners that are doing it tough, struggling with cash flow, struggling with time, staff, strategies to grow their business. And because of that pressure, because they're doing it so tough, often they're looking after number one, as in looking after themselves. Staff can come and go, and often they're looking at themselves and focusing on what they want and not enough on their win-win outcomes. And sometimes that holds them back and gets in the way of effective communication. It can create a barrier. Personal issues, e.g. grudges, resentments. A lot of people in our world hold grudges, sometimes for years or even decades, against various different people from their past, and resentments, and that can get in the way of effective communication. Poor communication outcome examples. I'm sure you've been witness to these. If you've been in business a number of years and you have employees, I'm sure you're very aware of how communication outcomes don't always achieve the desired results. For example, when you meet a new prospect and as a result of a conversation, they decide not to buy from you. In sales, it's critical to know why do people buy from you, and it's critical to know why don't people buy from you. And I really believe the only way to find that out is to ask them in either circumstance. When people buy from you, you simply say, why did you choose to buy from my business or from me? And don't assume you know the answer, because I've found by asking that question myself for the last 8 years and beyond, I've often been surprised by the answer as to why I think they bought from me, what they were looking to achieve, and why they actually did. There's often a very big gap between the two. It's the same with people who don't buy from you. Ask them why they didn't choose to buy from you and what were their reasons. And then you learn wonderful insights that can improve your sales or communication skills by finding out why people don't buy from you. Employees not following your instructions, that's a big one that a lot of business owners get frustrated with. Often they say, I might as well do it myself. And that's a common phrase that I've heard a lot of times. Losing a regular client. You lose a client. For whatever reason, you let them down. You didn't do what they expected. You didn't accurately identify their needs, or you assume that what their needs were. It's very easy to lose a client in any business. It's one of the easiest things you probably can do in business, but that's a result of a poor communication outcome. Rework is a similar thing where you have to redo something, or an employee has to redo work because of the instructions weren't clearly understood by that person. Too many sickies is an indicator of poor communication outcomes. I talk a lot about this in various different avenues of business or various different areas of business where communication just simply breaks down. And communication outcomes can represent things like having a lot of sickies, employees deciding not to turn up because they don't like the workplace environment overall, so they choose not to be there as a response to that communication that they're feeling or experiencing in that environment. So let's define being a great communicator. See how many points you can say, that's me to a T. Number one, you make people feel listened to and considered. Number two, you listen patiently. Don't just give instructions. So when you give instructions, you're waiting for responses, not just a head nod, but hopefully some verbal responses from people as well. You acknowledge other people's point of view, and I believe the best way to acknowledge other people's point of view is to give a verbal response, not a head nod, not an eye glance, but a verbal response, acknowledging other people's point of view. Stay calm and pleasant at all times. I'm not a believer that anger needs to be present in a workplace environment ever. I don't think people like someone else being angry at them, and I am a big believer of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you don't like people yelling at you or being angry at you, then I recommend you don't do it with other people. So staying calm and pleasant at all time keeps you in a clearer headspace so you can think clearly, whereas being angry shuts off creative thinking because you're reflecting on the past of what's happened or the repercussions in the future. You're not being present. So being present means being pleasant and staying calm at all times. Number 5, accept mistakes from people you teach or train. Part of learning is to make mistakes. Sometimes when people are learning from mistakes, it means they're showing initiative. If you don't want any employees showing initiative, they're not going to learn very much, are they? So we want to allow people to make some mistakes so that they can learn as well. Seek confirmation of understanding, ideally verbal responses. It's very easy to say to someone, this is what I need you to do, off you go, instead of saying, are you clear with what it is you needed to do or need to do at the end of the sentence, so that therefore you're getting a confirmation of understanding instead of just assuming they've understood everything precisely that you've relayed to them. So out of these 6, how would you say that's me to a T, or that's mostly me, or I've got a bit of work to do? It's just a time to have a think about where you can improve based on these 6 little areas. And these are not the biggest ones, but there's certainly some room for improvement in the majority of these. And communication's like that. It's not like you're a perfect communication expert or you're the opposite. There's no such thing as perfection in communication. There are just higher levels of excellence and skills. So I'm a big believer that you can constantly improve everything, and especially communication. So out of these, how did you go? Did you get 6 out of 6 where you say that's me to a T, or that's me mostly? How did you go? If you went 6 out of 6, fantastic. I'll be surprised if you're watching this webinar if you did, but if you are, that means you're striving for excellence, not perfection, and congratulations on that if that's the case. 2 essential ingredients of teaching. As a trainer, dating back 18 odd years, I've had to train business owners on subjects they know often not much about. Things like profit and loss statements, chart of accounts, what a gross profit margin is, what's a cost of sale. And as a teacher, I found you've got to go very slowly with subjects that people are unfamiliar with. And something I learned a long time ago, 25 years ago, was a subject called accelerated learning and how the brain works. And I found that I've talked about this subject in dozens and dozens and dozens of workshops with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of business owners, and I often get this feedback after talking about this subject, which is, why isn't this information taught in schools? And that is often that's probably the most asked question I get after talking about teaching and the way I teach, and then asking everyone if they understand the principles and what their feedback is on what I've just talked to them. Now, that's because I might spend 15 minutes just talking about learning, because I found if you don't talk about learning before you start teaching people, often they don't learn because their brain is not attuned in a certain way to understanding what it is that you're going to talk about. So I found there are 2 essential things I always talk about when I'm teaching anyone. Every single course I run, I always talk about these 2 essential ingredients of either learning or teaching. So today I'm talking about it from a teaching perspective. Start with what you want done. So when you're talking about anything you're relaying as an instruction or teaching an employee to do what you want, talk about what it is that you want done as far as an outcome. And I use the word what here as an emphasis. We live in a how-to society where we're taught how to do things. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. We're taught by instructions that are sequential in nature. However, I've found it's better to step back and talk about what it is that you want done as an outcome. So if they were to do a task, you talk about, this is what the task is I want you to do. This is what it will look like when you've finished it. This is a picture, if you like. This is a target. This is a goal. Talk about the outcome of what it is that you're about to instruct them on, and talk about that first. There's a task I need you to do. I want to talk about what the outcome of that task will look like. so that you know what the outcome is and what's expected from you. Now, it could be a quantity, it could be a time frame, it could be anything as far as an outcome. It might be they ring a client with that's the outcome and discuss certain points. But the what factor is often what's missing. So what happens is when we're communicating instructions, often I need you to do this. So the first thing I want you to do is this, then I want you to do this, then after that, this is what you got to do. And sometimes it's a stream of data, and then people just get lost in that stream. They can't remember all those things. And then you might say, have you got it? They nod their head, because people don't like to say, I'm sorry, I can't remember all those points. They nod their head instead. Go and do some tasks that you've explained that you thought you'd given them all the details for. They've forgotten some of it or a lot of it, and then they just wing it and make it up, and then they make mistakes. Next thing you know, you're going back and checking on them and getting them to redo it again. Now, in your mind, you're thinking about the outcome you want, but often that's not what's being communicated. What's being communicated is the how-to without the outcome in mind or being discussed in their mind. And it's like giving someone a bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces. Let's say there's a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, but you don't show them the outcome, which is the picture that they're trying to build from that jigsaw puzzle. But what you do is you pick up 2 or 3 pieces and show them how they may go together. So you're showing them how the pieces need to fit together. And you could show them that for an hour, but they still won't be effective at doing that jigsaw puzzle, because there's no destination, there's no picture, there's no target, there's no outcome in their mind of what they're striving to achieve. Another example is if you're sitting in a car and someone says, we need to go from A to B, I'll drive, I'll give you instructions, and you want to give someone instructions on how to get there. You'll find that a lot of people get frustrated by the instructions of go up here and turn right, then we're going to go left, and then we're going to go down another 400 meters, and then you turn right, and then you're going to see the second street on the left, and that's where we're going to. A lot of people just get overwhelmed with all those details. They can't remember the how-to multiple sequential steps. But if you said we're going from here to there, and this is what the destination is, and all of a sudden you relax and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I got an idea where we're going now. You feel more comfortable when you know outcome. And when you don't know outcome, you're worried that you're remembering all the steps. But if you've got an outcome in mind, it's just so much easier to get there. And I call that putting the cart before the horse, because a lot of business owners will explain what they wanted after an employee's made a mistake. They relay a lot of instructions, they relay a sequence of events or steps that they want followed, and the person has a go at it, they make a mistake, and then the business owners often come over and say, no, that's not what I wanted, this is what I wanted, this is what the outcome is, couldn't you understand that? And sometimes that's the exact words that are being relayed from the business owner to the employee. The other thing is to include the why. Why is that outcome important? And also discuss why. So this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do, this is why I want you to do it this way, this is why I don't want you to do it that way. And you'll find that by communicating this way with your employees, they'll seem very intelligent and competent compared to what they may have been before. Now, you may already do this, you may be excellent at communication, you may always talk about what, you may always talk about why. But I tend to find that we're often not as good as what we may think. We might think that we're perfect in this, but the outcome is just seen. The true communication is the response you get. Effective communication is the response. If your employees are sometimes not doing what it is that you wanted, then I'd ask them what the outcome was and why that was important afterwards to see if they can even remember what those two things were. And that's the test. Ask them about the what and the why when they finish the task and see if they can remember both. And you'll find that produces much better outcomes by communicating with your employees this way. So give it a go. It's something you can do in sales as well. You can sit down with a potential client, sit there and say, what I'd like to do is talk about this, 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 and this. And this is why I find these are the most relevant things that we find come up in our meetings. And then at the end of that discussion, then we'll talk about what we could do to work together if you'd like to proceed. How does that sound? And then you go into your how that you'd like to run the sales appointment. But by framing it up in a what outcome and putting the big steps in like a process instead of a procedure, it makes people feel more relaxed, because you're letting them know what the journey is that you're about to take them on and what the processes that you're about to lead them through. And people are far more comfortable when they're not blindfolded through a multiple step instruction process compared to knowing the destination, what it looks like. So try that if you're not already using it and see what happens. And look for two-way dialogue as well. You want to have reciprocation in the conversation where people are talking back to you, not just trying to remember and nodding their head. Nodding their head is actually a poor sign, because research is proven, and the clients will testify to this, that nodding heads does not mean 100% agreement or 100% comprehension. It's just I can hear the words coming out of your mouth. Body language, you could say, indicator of behavior. It's not an absolute that they're remembering everything that you're saying. Common workplace environments often it's not what we think it is. By working with a lot of business owners over the year, and by talking to a lot of employees over the years, independently of business owners and often with the business owners, I've found that it's not always rosy out there, and employees are not as happy as what the majority of business owners think that they are. And there's a lot of indicators for that in our society if you're looking for those signs. And often business owners like to think that all their employees are happy, but there's a bit of an assumption in there. They're not 100% sure. There's not enough evidence to support it. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But here's a little photo that I picked up years ago, and a lot of people chuckle when they read it. They chuckle, have a bit of a laugh, have a bit of a giggle about it, mainly because they can relate to it often as an employee when they work for a boss. And they didn't feel very well thought of, they didn't feel appreciated, they didn't feel valued, and that's often one of the major reasons why they go into business for themselves in competition to the last boss that they work for. And a lot of employees are not very happy with the environment. And in businesses, there's often a lot of hierarchy where people that have titles, it could be business owner or business manager or production manager or sales manager, a lot of people with titles don't treat people with equal respect as what they would anyone else. And it's very easy, it happens in our society a lot, where people tend to put their superiors on a pedestal, and there's a breakdown in communication as a result. And it's often about the respect and the lack of humility that people in managing or supervising or high level roles, they come across with this, dare I say, a little bit of arrogance because of the lack of humility. And I think humility is an absolutely essential ingredient of leadership, because then you lead by example with humility, because you expect others that you're supervising to have it as well. Here's another one. There's an app called Beat the Boss, and this is version 2. There's version 1, version 2, version 3. And I found out about Beat the Boss quite a few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it had this really high review rating, and you can see it here. It's got about a 4.25, 4.5 star rating, and there's 1,363 employees that have been passionate enough about their feelings on the receiving end of working for a boss to get this app as a free download on their phone, and then find lots of ways to crush, kill, maim, destroy, wound, and hurt their imaginary boss in the app. And you can see that what's driving this behavior is lots and lots of unhappy employees that don't like their bosses, don't like their supervisors, don't like their managers, and they're voting with their passion on reviews like you can see just here. And the app's gone through multiple versions as well, which is a pretty strong indictment of the level of feelings of a lot of employees in our workplace environments. You probably never heard of it, but this might be an app that some employees that you may know of may be playing secretly. You never know. But it's just another indicator that employees are not often as happy as what we like to think as business owners. Best ways to find out is to do an anonymous survey. Ask people to write down scale of 1 to 10, level of satisfaction with the business, with 10 out of 10 being ecstatic, love it, really, really like it, can't imagine anything that can improve the workplace environment, down to 1, I really don't want to be here. And ask them to give you a rating anonymously to find out. Now, I'm really big on the strategies of improving the team environment, which we'll talk about a little bit here, and also in the book, How to Develop Better Communication Skills. It's one of the first strategies that I always introduce to every business. And there are reasons why, because I see significant and sometimes massive productivity increases from introducing these strategies, even though it's not directly like a sales or marketing strategy, I see very big improvements in businesses rapidly as a result of introducing team building strategies. And I'd say from my experience, the average rating might be 6 out of 10 for the 1,000 plus business owners I've worked with. It's not as high as what people like to think it might be, 8 or 9 out of 10. It's usually not. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 out of 10, and I've had clients where they had the employees from hell from a business they just purchased, where after a month they all demanded a 20% pay rise, or they were all about to resign, all of them. And I would have said they're probably about 1 or 2 out of 10 in that environment. And the good news was we completely turned the whole business around, recycled every employee in the business 3 times, because there were so many bad apples. As soon as you hire a good apple employee, the bad apple bunch would destroy the good apple that just got recruited. So I've been through this a lot with refinement of strategies in really tough business environments with team building, and I've found that it's not as happy as what we like to think, and whatever level it is, it can go to a whole new level of effectiveness and synergy and happiness in the workplace environment. The strategy to boost productivity and happiness. Here's one that I want to share with you. Conduct regular weekly team meetings. A lot of people say, we run team meetings once a month. I've found the optimal is weekly. After working with a lot of business owners that have conducted monthly, conducted weekly, ad hoc team meetings, this is the best recipe I've found from testing and measuring this over 18 years. First one is that make sure everyone attends. Sometimes business owners have what they call a toolbox meeting, which is the technical staff only, and that excludes people. It creates an us and them culture in your business where the income producers, the technical staff, are the most important, the admin or finance or sales people not so important, and they're excluded. I don't believe in doing that unless you're doing it after a team meeting. Then you might separate into individual meetings, but make sure everyone attends a weekly team meeting. Why weekly? Weekly I find is a magical time frame because there's a different name for every day of the week for a start. But if you said, what was that job that you were working on Tuesday last week or Tuesday the week before last, a lot of employees just won't remember. It's just too long ago. So if you want to address certain things that come up in a business environment, a weekly time frame is the best time frame. Fortnightly or monthly, too much water under the bridge. Too many things have happened. People can't remember. And how do you improve something if you can't remember it? It just creates more problems in a business. Make sure everyone speaks. See, a lot of team meetings are not a team meeting, they're a lecture. And a lecture is where one person talks and lots of people nod, and that's about it. Those meetings become very dull and very boring, and no one will want to participate because they feel like they're just getting told off and they're a bunch of noddies nodding their head as the boss speaks. It doesn't really work. It's not a team meeting then. You have a staff meeting where people don't give a staff, not a team meeting where together or training everyone achieves more. Take minutes, act on suggestions and review. Write down what people say and act on it. So if someone says they're not happy about blah, 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 or they need a tool, or they need a resource, or they want this, or they want that, if you just go, oh, yeah, okay, and that's it, move on, what you've said to them is what you've just communicated in the team meeting isn't that important. And with that message back to the employee, guess what happens to your team meetings? No one talks because they think, what's the point of saying anything? If what I say isn't acted on, isn't acknowledged, isn't seen as being important, hasn't been verbally responded to in an encouraging way that makes me feel like I wasn't just fobbed off or ignored, then employees learn from the experience that there's no point talking in team meetings, and that's the end of the team meeting. So make sure you take minutes, act on it, and give a very specific answer to each person that contributes in a team meeting about what actions will be taken. You'll be taking about any suggestions that come up. Number 1, introduce numbers that involve all staff. A lot of business owners only bring in 1 or 2 numbers. There's about 5 I've identified that I think are essential to bring into businesses. They're ones that I teach business owners how to measure with measuring tools that will identify those numbers, and then we bring those in. Sometimes businesses get very, very production orientated, which means that the admin staff or the sales or the finance staff just tune out. They get bored because the numbers only become about one area of the business. So bringing numbers in where all people are represented in their area or department are essential to keep team meetings running, because the numbers are the evidence of whatever's happening, whether it's improvement or whether it's not. The numbers are evidence of what's happening, and therefore you will always have things to talk about in team meetings. Why weekly team meetings work? Well, everyone feels listened to, they feel valued, they feel appreciated, they feel respected when they're allowed to talk. If they're not allowed to talk, then the opposite happens. Everyone feels respected. An opportunity to speak about irritations, so little frustrations or irritations, they feel like they can bring them up instead of putting up with them. A lot of employees leave businesses that they work for. They stick at about 3.5 years these days. It used to be 10 to 20 years, but these days people will stick in a business often for not that long because they're not feeling listened to, they're not feeling respected, they're feeling irritated, they're feeling frustrated, no one seems to be interested, they don't like it, and they move on. Whereas I've found it's the complete opposite with my clients, that once they run team meetings, they don't lose employees anymore. If they do, they're the poor performing ones that are actually very easily identified in the team, and that's what happened as a result. Catch up on other departments and people. It's a great coming together environment where you get to hear from other people and you get to care about other people in a business environment, because other people are sharing their irritations, their concerns, their challenges. Creates accountability when department numbers are discussed, and that to me is the biggest benefit in a business environment, is to bring numbers of departments, so conversion rates or sales income or amount of work that's being produced, not invoiced but produced as a dollar figure from the technical staff, the dollar value of money banked in the business from finance, overdue receivables, number of weeks, average debtor days, things like that. You can bring a lot of numbers into a business environment that start to create some accountability. Individually, I'm a bit wary of, because I'm not a believer of airing people's dirty laundry in a group. So singling people out that are not achieving or that made a mistake or reworked, and singling them out in a group environment, that damages people more than it helps people. So I'm not a believer of that, but I am a believer of department numbers, things like gross margins, conversion rates, even things like that. The ones that I mentioned are awesome because of that accountability factor. Identifies poor contributors too. So when you start tracking numbers and you start running team meetings, you'll get some people that don't want to communicate. And often at this time, I'm often pulled up by someone who says, but what about the quiet, shy ones that don't talk much? Well, encourage them to talk. Talk to them before the meeting, give them examples of what sort of things they could say in a meeting, and ask other people to ask them to contribute as well. You'll find that they will contribute. The people that are quiet or shy or introverted, they will contribute. You just need to encourage them enough and make them feel safe enough to participate, and they will. But you'll find that over time, often the poor attitude people are the ones that don't want to say much, or if they do, it's often a complaint, not a suggestion for improvement. So there's a lot of good reasons why team meetings work awesome, and I found that clients that persist with the team meetings and run them for 1 year or more, when I talk to them, I'll say, how do the team meetings go? Their response is things like this: it's awesome. No one's ever sick on team meeting day. They love it. They can't wait for it. They can't wait to look at the numbers. They can't wait to catch up, review how they went, and hear how everyone else has gone in the business. Now, sometimes it might take a couple of months to get it to that level, but the result is awesome. And if the business owner a year later said to them, we're not running team meetings anymore, there'd be a mutiny, because the staff would be very upset because they get so much out of it themselves. That's what I found. So it is a strategy. It takes a little while to get in place. There are some things that you need to do to make it work. I've given you the tips here of what sort of things you need to do to make it work, and I strongly encourage you to do it. Forget the cost. And here's another aspect that may encourage you to want to run them. You may have heard of Walmart, one of the biggest department stores in the world. Sam Walton was the wealthiest man in the world. Walmart was the biggest company in the world by revenue at one stage, and he has something like 30,000 employees. Sam Walton stopped work, everyone in every store on a Saturday morning, and ran a team meeting. So if he can do that with 30,000 employees every week and see value in it, and he did it for the whole time he was running his own company for more than 10 years, that's a pretty strong indicator that anyone can do it. And forget the cost of the labor cost. It's not about the cost, it's about profit. and it's about synergy. It's about retaining staff that feel valued so that you're not replacing, which can be very expensive just to replace one. It's about retaining, it's about increasing productivity, it's about making people happier, and happy people are more productive. They solve their own problems, they think for themselves, and this is the best happiness strategy I've ever seen. It works awesome. All right, so let's talk about 3 other valuable people skills. I think these are essential skills that we need to learn in business. I'll identify them, then we'll talk a little bit more about how to improve in these areas. In the first introduction, if you're meeting a potential employee for the first time that you're interviewing for, or it might even be a prospect that you're identifying to see if you want them as a client, then quickly and accurately determining any person's aptitude, attitude, and behavior type. These 3 things are actually, it's like everything, it's easy when you know how. A lot of people wouldn't know a person that has great aptitude or not when they first meet them, or even months later they still may not know what their aptitude is like for, say, career advancement as a potential supervisor or manager. Same with attitude, same with behavior type. These things, when you do know these 3 different aspects of people, your skills with people have increased dramatically. So let me give you some more insight into that. There are signs for all 3 of these as separate individual things, and if you know what to look for, you can pick them up within minutes, and I mean minutes, of meeting a person for the first time. A lot of employers, they hire an employee and 4 months later they sack them for having a bad attitude. My point of view on that is they always had a bad attitude. You just couldn't identify it in the first meeting that you had with them because you didn't have the skill to identify it. Attitudes don't change much at all, but people will hire on resumes and experience and qualifications and then sack them for attitude. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why don't you hire on attitude as the number 1 trait with the qualification, of course, and don't look for experience. Look for attitude, which is teachability, and aptitude, which means latent skills to be able to do those things that they don't know that they can do yet, and you can teach them because they'll pick it up quick. And even behavior type. So let's go into a few of these. So as far as aptitude, I've found the best tool for understanding behaviors and aptitudes is one called DISC profiles. You're probably familiar with it. You've probably heard of it, because I find the majority of people have heard of it in business, but the minority have actually had their own profile done, and a very, very small minority actually understand it well enough to pick or identify a person's DISC profile when they first meet them within minutes. That's when this skill becomes extremely valuable. So people are either outgoing or reserved, and if they're outgoing, they're like a runner. They keep running in a direction. They can change directions very quickly. These are what we call the dominant or influence profiles. The reserved people are more thoughtful. They're slower to jump into anything, but they're like ocean liners. They get a lot of momentum and they can stay the course once they start. Whereas the dominant influence people can change directions, then the reserve people, which are the compliant and steady people, tend to stay the course. Slower to get started, but stay the course. Dominant influence jump in fast and then think as they go. Compliant steady want to think before they act. So the dominant influence are multitasking experts. The compliant steady are more sequential. Finish something, start the next thing. Finish something, start the next thing. That's just what they're best suited for. D and C, or dominant compliant, are what we call task-oriented or independent, working on their own is what their preference is. Influence and steady people are people who like to talk and work with people while they're doing their work. So this helps to define aptitudes very, very accurately and very, very strongly. So the D and I profiles have an aptitude towards leadership and authority. They handle a lot of responsibility and can think across multiple tasks at the same time and juggle them all. Compliant steady are often great technicians because they are happy to do the same thing over and over and over and over. They don't want the variety as much as the D and I profiles. They're happy to be more consistent. So if you want something done consistently well, compliant steady person has the best aptitude for that. And same with roles where they're working on their own a lot. Well, the dominant compliant people are better at working independently, if not having to talk or socialize with people. The influence steady people are the opposite. You put them in customer service. They're excellent at answering phones where they have to talk to people a lot, or greet people, or see people, or supervise and talk to people a lot. That's just what they're good at. So as far as aptitudes goes, this profile is awesome. As far as understanding behaviors, this profiles are awesome. The behavior is that D&Is will jump in and initiate tasks. They recognize when things need to be initiated and they jump in and they assume the leadership role and they jump in. Compliant steady are often waiting for those people to jump in and they respond. They support when those people start. That's an aptitude, but also a behavior. So understanding this increases your skills dramatically. Out of the 1,000+ business owners I've worked with as clients for 18+ years, when I survey them, which I always do with every client I work with long term, what did you like best out of everything you learned from me? This is the number one subject by far. And that's because you use it in everyday relationships. You use it in recruitment to match ideal candidates to roles in your business. You use it for career advancement if you're going to promote a supervisor or a manager in your business. It helps in sales dramatically to learn how to sell to each profile their unique way, because each profile needs you to sell in a completely unique way. Our natural profile irritates the other three, which is 75% of people are irritated by you being your natural self. And in sales, when you irritate people, it's very hard to get sales from a person that you're irritating. And unfortunately, this is pretty true. So in sales, it helps in management, individual ways that you influence, lead, teach, or manage a person. It helps. So there's so many different areas in business that I think if you're going to study one thing in business, this is it. Second to none. The best subject. I've had clients triple their profits, increase sales, improve their profitability, their productivity dramatically within weeks of just learning this one subject. So let's go through each one in a little bit more detail. So dominant traits handle a lot of responsibility easily. That's what the D profiles are excellent at. They don't like close supervision of being checked on all the time. They're excellent when you give them a lot of responsibility. They have a take charge kind of aspect to their profile. They like to be in control. They tend to be fairly blunt and direct, but when you get used to that, you'll find that you really enjoy working with them because you know where you stand. If they're not happy, they'll let you know. If they're happy, they'll let you know. So they tend to be very direct with people. That some people don't like that, but that helps to be really clear in where you're going and what you're trying to achieve when you're working with them. Very goal oriented, very, very strong need to be very productive. They love that challenge that you give them in a workplace environment. And they're best at working on their own with a lot of responsibility, with instructions like, this is what I want you to achieve as an outcome. Don't talk about how, you just irritate them. Talk about what you want as an outcome, and they're fantastic at going for it and figuring it out themselves. So that's the dominant traits, which makes them a very unique person in a business environment. Influence traits. They have the gift of the gab. These people like to have fun. They bring that happiness into a workplace environment. They make friends and build rapport very easily. They like to have fun, tell stories. They've always got a good story to tell. They're always up for a chat, great in sales and communication roles, which is where you want that gift of the gab, that ability to build rapport, make friends very, very easily. And they're best in high variety work roles. So they love a challenge. They love doing new things. They love doing things they haven't done before. Whereas the high consistency roles, that's going to irritate them a bit. They like to be able to express themselves and talk and engage and have fun and influence and persuade. That's where they're best. That's their aptitude. That's their behavior. Steady traits. The steady profile is very caring and empathetic. They're excellent at supporting other people. That's what they do best. They're very team oriented. They want people to be happy. They're thinking about how other people feel in a team environment. They rarely criticize, condemn, or complain. They do what you want without question. If you go up to an S person and say, "Can you help me with something?" they'll say yes immediately before they even know what they're saying yes to. Not many profiles do that. Most people will ask, "What is it you want?" Whereas an S will say yes and then find out what it is that you want afterwards. They're always willing to be supportive of others. And they're not in a hurry to do tasks. Don't think they're going to plow through lots of work really fast. They won't. Steady is the word. They're steady about how they go about things. They're methodical and you can rely on them, but they're not going to be in a rush to do it. Compliant traits. Like attention to details. They're excellent with details. They're always working on a schedule. They love sticking to a routine over and over and over. The D&I profiles, not so strong on routines. The C's and S's, they like routines, they like their schedules. They like to do the same work over and over and over and over because they like to refine, improve, perfect, find better, more efficient ways of doing the same task. They like to plan and then work their plan. In fact, they're always running a planner or they're always running a schedule. You ask them if they got a schedule, they'll always have a schedule. Prefer to work independently. It's like, leave me alone, let me do my job, and I'll do a really good job. They don't want to talk about it while they're working. They want to work independently. And they're problem solvers, and they have a very good, strong analytical mind, which is excellent for problem solving. So they look for the for, they look for the against. They look for the up, they look for the down. They look for the good, they look for the bad, and that's what they're great at, identifying all those details. So DISC Profiles, in summary, is just an awesome tool for aptitude and understanding how to lead each profile, understanding how to sell to each profile, understanding how to manage each profile. All over, two excellent skills to have in businesses: aptitude and understanding DISC profiles. And like I said before, when you get trained in understanding DISC profiles, you can pick 80% of people's profiles on the phone within 2 to 30 seconds. That is a very, very valuable skill to have, because then you stop irritating them and how you behave or communicate to them from that point, and that just improves communication overall. The other critical skill that I believe we need to have in business is identifying attitudes, and it could be clients, but generally we're talking about employees. So my definition of a great attitude is the willingness to engage people in a positive verbal way. So if I ask you a question like, what do you think so far? How have you found this webinar? Or how have you found this training? That means you'd say, so far so good, Tim, or I learned a few things or I didn't. It's as simple as that. That's as simple as what I'm talking about. So when you ask a person a question like an employee or a client, they're willing to engage you. They have a verbal response to you because they recognize that you're trying to engage with them. They have that ability to read what your intention is in the conversation, and then they respond to it by saying yes or no, or I like that, or I don't like that, or this is my thoughts. They verbally respond. I'm sure in your workplace environment you've met people where you ask them a question and you're wondering if they actually have the hearing ability because you've had nothing in response. So that's the complete opposite of that. So the great attitude people have found are willing to engage people in a positive verbal way. So using this principle, you can ask potential candidates that you want to hire certain questions that are kind of left field. They're a little bit out of the box that they're not used to, and see if they're willing to engage your question in a positive verbal way. If they just kind of roll their eyes as if to say, well, that's a dumb question, well, then they don't have a good attitude. Let me explain it a little bit more this way. So I think people are a bit like tree branches. Some don't bend, they snap. So they don't have any flexibility in how they deal with people. Whereas a person with a positive attitude is willing to engage you, whether they love the topic of conversation or not, they're willing to engage you in a positive verbal way. Whereas poor attitude people only want to communicate when they're on their favorite subjects or in their real comfort zone. Whereas people with great attitudes are willing to get out of their comfort zone, and that means they're great learners. People with poor attitudes don't want to learn, don't want to accommodate, don't want to change anything. It has to be their way. So they don't bend, they snap. Whereas green tree branches will bend. And when you go to the next level and look at willow branches, one single willow branch you can tie it in a knot. You can tie knot after knot after knot because they're so flexible. And that to me is what makes a person have a great attitude. They have a personal confidence, a personal awareness, a personal esteem where they're willing to be flexible, not rigid, because they don't worry about what other people think. They are themselves and they understand how to communicate with people, and they are very good communicators because they're not too scared or too worried or too self-conscious or too nervous to speak up. They actually engage people in a positive way. And that makes them, I find, far better employees to hire. So great attitude people are flexible, just like a willow branch, whereas some people, you know what I mean, you ask them to do something your way and they don't do it your way, they want to do it their way. That means they're inflexible, and you can keep taking this in a further and further direction. So this is a simple definition that stood the test of time, that a willingness to engage people in a positive verbal way. And if you've watched the movie that's about the Google. Well, it's like a Google internship. You may have seen it. It's a comedy with Owen Wilson. And they get asked a question at the start of a movie where they're supposedly applying for a job working for Google. And I think the question was, if you're the size of a dime and you're stuck in a blender, what are you going to do? So it's a real out there kind of question, but the question is designed to test attitude. To me, as soon as I heard the question, it was so obvious. Google hires on attitude by that question, because you've got to be willing to gauge people in a positive way. A negative way would be, well, that's a dumb question. Why do I have to answer it? That would be an example of engaging in a negative verbal way. So willing to engage in a positive verbal way where you explore concepts, you have conversations about people. And I do this as a buyer or a potential buyer of services. I have a lot of in-depth conversations with people that I want to buy from. And often at the end I say, well, look, this is my situation. I don't see enough value in it. It's not something I want to do right now. I'll keep it in mind. Maybe I'll look at it another time, but that's just where I'm at now. But I'm very happy to engage people in any conversation, whether I'm going to buy or not, because I think that's what you should do in life. That to me is having a positive attitude, not dismissing people, ignoring people, pretending you can't hear them. That to me doesn't get you very far in life. So here's a good definition and try it out. See how you go. What motivates people? Learning and growing as a person, I believe, is what motivates us. Everything in nature is growing and evolving. I think people are the same. So learning and growing as a person is a great way to motivate someone. Set up feedback loops, i.e. work and results. Humans love feedback. We all do. It's like you train a dog to sit, you give it feedback, which is a form of reward if it does what you like. Well, every animal is trained exactly the same. You ask it to do something, it attempts to do it. It's a set of instructions. When it does it, then it's rewarded. Well, people are the same. We need feedback loops, and we like feedback loops. And it could be we set our own goals. It could be we set company goals and see if we've achieved them, or we have KPIs. But this is what motivates people. This one's a big one that I see is lacking a lot in businesses, where you praise 3 times more than you correct. In a book called The Happiness Advantage, a very big research project was undertaken to see what do people respond from the most to get the most productivity. And one of the key ingredients they found was recognizing that people need, I think it was 2.9013, they even went into decimal points, as far as how many times people need to be praised before they're corrected in what it is they're doing in a workplace environment. I've just averaged it to 3. But often it's the other way around. It might be 3 corrections for 1 praise. Well, they found it's actually the opposite. 3 times more praising than correcting is how you motivate people to want to do work for you by the energy, that positivity that you're giving them. They use it in their workplace environment. Recognition for contributional efforts, singling people out in a group and congratulating them and recognizing and for their contribution and for their effort is a very powerful thing that keeps people very, very motivated for sometimes days or weeks, even months. Money, but money is not a good motivator. Thoughtfulness is a motivator, but not money. If you pay people more money thinking it'll motivate them, well, for about a month, and then they're going to say, well, I've improved, or they think they have, and that's where they're going to stop. They're not going to keep improving because there's no emotion that's being exchanged, whereas the other ones, there often is. So the foundation of communication, I think, is really your depth of understanding of other people. I find that most people really don't understand people that well. And vice versa, when you really understand people, you know so much about them as soon as you start meeting them. By being able to identify people's DISC profiles, I found nearly all business owners that were D profile had the same challenges in their business. All I profiles had typically the same challenges in their business. All S and C, they all had the same challenges in their business because of their DISC profile. And by understanding their DISC profile, I could talk about the challenges in their business very, very easily, and the conversation flowed really nicely because they felt understood. And when people feel like you understand them, they want to be with you, spend more time with you, and they're more comfortable doing business with you. So understanding people is the foundation of being a great communicator. And DISC profiles, aptitude, and attitude, those 3 things combined, means you don't feel frustrated, you don't get upset, you don't get angry with people anymore because people are just so much easier to work with. So I think your depth of understanding of people in business makes a huge difference to how you feel about life and your time in business and the people that you work with. And understanding why they behave the way they do and what drives them is the key to being a great communicator. There's an old saying that says, how do you get what you want? Help other people to get what they want along the way. So understanding what drives people and understanding how to tap into that to create mutually beneficial, synergistic benefits for the two of you is huge in what will happen in accelerating your business and moving yourself forward in life. So do you aspire to be great with people or just okay with people? I think it's an important question. If you aspire to be great, then I want to talk about the next step if I can for the next 5 or so minutes. And yes, we're about on time, but I want to just talk a little bit longer about what I can offer you if you want to become this great communicator with people and be much happier in your life, not just at work, but also at home in all of your relationships. I have an advanced communication skills training. It's delivered as an online training session in like a video conference style. Unlike this video or a webinar where it's one-way communication, one person talking, I don't like webinars for that reason. I much prefer to meet people face-to-face and talk to them. It's the same with the workshops. Every workshop or short course I run, I do it as a online training or face-to-face training, and that way it's a video conference on webcam. Everyone gets to see everyone else. Everyone is on mic or unmiked or mic plugged in so we can hear each other, talk to each other, and that to me is what communication skills is all about. The workshop content, everyone will be DISC profile assessed, and not just for yourself but also all of your team. And we'll talk about that in the course and talk about some advanced insights into reading the profile. You get a graphed outcome, and from the graphed outcome it's extremely insightful what it tells you about every person. So this will improve your skills enormously about which employees can handle pressure, which ones can't, which ones you need to talk a certain way with so that you don't irritate them, you don't upset them, you don't rub them the wrong way. But the opposite, you get far more output from them because of how you're communicating to them. That'll be part of it. You'll help to identify personality blind spots. Now, blind spot is where you have a strength, which is called your awareness, what you're aware of, and then a blind spot is what you're unaware of. So D's and I's and S and C's, they all have a blind spot, which is what they're not so strong at. Every profile has great strengths, but every profile has blind spot, which is their weaknesses that they can't really see. And we'll talk about what those blind spots are and how you're communicating and how you may be running your business that holds you back because of those blind spots. How to identify great attitude candidates before you hire them in one powerful and insightful question. I'll give you my best question that when you ask it, I put so much emphasis on it. I can almost say yes, hire them, or don't hire them just by the answer that they can give because of the type of answer I look for by asking this one question. The 4 ingredients of super success. It's an organic process of change for yourself or others. If you want to encourage people, empower people to do more than what they do, if they get stuck, if they doubt themselves, then these 4 ingredients helps with that. You can use it to change habits. You can use it to change behaviors. I use it with my clients all the time. And then when I explain to them what I've been doing, they nod their head and go, wow, I could see that you're very good at getting me to do things willingly, but I didn't understand how you're doing it. And then they use it themselves with their own employees, and they find that they become far better at influencing their employees to do more things than what they would before, or the things that they thought that they couldn't, or things that they thought were too hard. They got them over that barrier. Attitudes and insights into each DISC profile. I'm going to spend a bit of time on understanding each of the profiles so that you can see the positive and negative aspects of their attitude of each of the profiles. That improves your people skills significantly, if not enormously, just understanding that. Workshop content, entrepreneur mindset examples of clients who have added $300,000 plus to their business's net profit in months, not turnover, I'm talking net profit. Talk about what those mindsets are and give you some examples where our mindset can sometimes be our blind spot. We don't understand our own mindset. And when you transcend mindsets, you can see opportunities that are there to increase profits rapidly in businesses. How to motivate employees to work as hard as you do. And it's not that hard. We'll talk about how to do that. How to delegate more effectively. I'll take you through a 5-step delegation process. Most people use 3 of the steps, and that's why they're not very good at delegating. If you have a challenge with delegating where people do what you want pretty much to the letter and you don't have to remind them, then fantastic. If not, then you'll love these steps. And this helps to free up your time and leverage out of certain tasks and roles in your business as well. How to truly work smart, not theoretically as most information discusses. By partnering with 5 entrepreneurs and seeing how they build very big businesses quickly in their whole mindset, I've understood what really working smart is, and not many people in our world really get it. You either get it or you don't. And there's a lot of evidence that says that people are not really working smart, even though they may think they are. Judging by the lack of progress, that's kind of the evidence that they're not. So we'll talk about what working smart can really mean. And other aspects of personality I haven't touched on that you'll benefit from knowing. It's an incredible opportunity. You'll be far more confident with anyone that you meet because you'll understand how to relate to every person you meet, from simple things like disc profiling. You'll be a much better leader or teacher. It will improve your communication skills, your ability to lead, your ability to influence and teach other people. You'll see staff productivity increase as a result of the way you help to synergize your team and encourage and empower your employees. You'll be happy at work and socially. Your ability to get along with people has got everything to do with how well you understand them and talk their language. So that will be a definite outcome as well. And you'll be far more influential as a leader for your clients. Influential means get them to do what they want to see as an outcome willingly and happily. To find out more or to register for this course, this half-day course is held regularly. Register your interest and number of attendees here on this URL. Click where you see this video or simply go to this URL. It'll also be below the video in the description box. profittransformations.com/people-skills. You'll then be contacted about the next available course that we have running. Or pick up a free communication skills training and strategies book, How to Develop Better Communication Skills. It's our top communications and strategies ebook available to you for free as a download. Simply go to profittransformations.com/free-stuff/communication-skills, and you can be reading more about the awesome strategies, some of which we've touched on in this training, and some additional ones, yours completely free. So go there, grab the book now, or if you'd like to register for the course, the communication skills course, click on the link next to this video and go there. And all the best with your communication success.